Good morning, everyone. My name is Paul Springman, and I have the pleasure of introducing our speaker this morning. But before we get started, just an editorial comment or two. When Nancy and I moved here 25 years ago from Chicago, one of the things we were apprehensive about was the loss of quality arts and entertainment and those sorts of things. And I'm embarrassed to say that we were absolutely dead wrong. It wasn't long after we arrived in Richmond that we became acquainted with the VMFA, and it wasn't long after that till our featured speaker, Alex Nargis, arrived at VMFA about 20 years ago. Alex has had a very distinguished career and has really put the VMFA here in Richmond into one of the top 10 museums in the country of its size. I think a particular insight that Alex brings to his craft and his profession is that he is an artist himself. He is a world-class photographer. He's had exhibits, exclusive exhibits on a number of occasions at a number of destinations. And as he approaches his job of CEO and executive director of the VMFA, to me, this gives him a particular insight as to not only how artists think, but how consumers such as us and patrons enjoy and support museums like VMFA. Alex is a two-time graduate of George Washington University. I read an interesting tidbit, which I didn't know previously, that I guess your undergraduate degree was in anthropology and archaeology, and then a master's degree also from George Washington in, not surprising, museum studies. We're absolutely thrilled to have Alex and Alex's Director of Development, Aaron Elder, with us today. Alex is going to give us an overview and a little bit of history of the VMFA, speak specifically to some of the exhibits that have been shown at the VMFA over the years, and equally important, spend a fair amount of time speaking to the massive expansion of the museum and the differences it's going to make in the quality of the presentations and the capabilities of VMFA in the future. So if you could please join me and give Alex Nargis a warm welcome. Alex?
Thank you very much, Paul, and good morning, everybody, and thank you. Hey, Charlie. Good morning, Charlie. One of my longest and dearest friends here in Richmond, Virginia, and Paul, it has been just about 20 years ago right now that I came to Virginia to be interviewed for the job as the director and CEO of the Virginia Museum of Fine Arts. And just for those of you who've been here a long time, the museum 20, 30 years ago was not the museum as it is today. We've obviously grown, we've expanded, but one of the key things was that we were always great next door neighbors with the Virginia Historical Society, and Charlie and I would go to lunch every month and sit down and talk about things from across our driveway. So. That's right, the Baltimore Orioles, we share a passion for the Orioles, and of course the fact that they were in last place last year is driving both of us crazy. But you know, this year they're going to do better. So, but you know what we've seen in the 20 years has been remarkable. And Paul, I appreciate your opening comments because as a photographer, it certainly does give me a different perspective. But I can tell you that we are all about art and connecting people to art. Without the two ends, we're really not able to do what we can do so well. I will tell you, though, right now, the museum is about to celebrate its 90th anniversary. We opened in 1936. This is a view of the museum in 1935. We were a very small fraction of who we are today. And this was a rather bold move. Stop and think about 1934 when the legislature and the governor authorized the Virginia Museum of Fine Arts. We were in the middle, not just in Virginia, but the country and the world of the Great Depression. And we were the largest building project and employer in the city of Richmond for the 2 years or so that it took to build the building. Not that I want a depression again, but the idea of building a building in 2 years, when I talk about the building in a little bit, it's going to take us 3 years to build just a wing, just to put it in perspective. But from those rather humble and rather small beginnings, we had a collection of 50 works of art. 50. And most of them are still there, but they're joined by another 50,000 works of art in the collection, which span 5,000 years of humankind history and literally every part of the globe over the last 5 millennia. I do want to pause for a moment before I talk about the great year we've just had and the exciting things that are coming up, because we've actually lost 2 of the most key people that have helped to transform the Virginia Museum of Fine Arts. First was Jim McLaughlin. Jim and Fran is very much with us. I just talked to her on the phone the other day, and I'm going to go down to Naples, Florida, where they winter in a bit to see her and bring her up to date about the expansion schedule and all of the new things. And by the way, I'm going to show you some drawings that, other than the trustees, no one has seen with the expansion until today. We have a State of the Museum address online this afternoon at the end of the day, and we'll be showing it to our membership for the first time. The Richmond Times-Dispatch got a pre-release this morning, and I had an interview with Colleen Curran to talk her through what we're doing. Anyways, Jim and Fran, as you probably know, gave the lead gift for the 2010 wing, which bears their name. Then Jim and Fran turned around and about 4 years ago decided to give us another substantial gift, $57 million, so that the McLaughlin name will be on the new wing. Now, Jim turns to me after they said they were going to make the gift, and he said, "So what are we going to call the wing?" And in the office, we had been joking, literally joking, "Oh, why don't we just put a Roman numeral 2 next to it?" And so I blurted it out. And Jim looked at me and said, "Oh, I love it. The McLaughlin wing, Roman numeral 2. So, Jim, thank you. But Jim, we flew down to Bristol for his 85th birthday, healthiest 85-year-old person you'd ever seen in your life. And then, unfortunately, just a few weeks later, he died suddenly. We also then, more recently, as you probably saw in the papers, lost Francis Lewis. If you want to talk about people that can be credited for where we are today, there are people like Leslie Cheek, who was director from the 40s to the 60s, who really helped to build the credibility of the museum as a world-class institution. But then come along in the 1980s, and you have Paul Mellon, and then Francis and Sidney Lewis. And interestingly enough, I'll tie Francis back to both Fran and Jim, because Sidney Lewis is having an operation, Jim is having an operation. And in the waiting room, you have Francis and Fran, who had not ever met before. And this was at MCB. And they got to talking, and they got to talking about art. And this is the first part of the 80s. And, Fran got really interested, and they got to be friends. And lo and behold, of course, the Lewis wing with the magnificent contemporary and modern art, our Art Nouveau and Art Deco and Tiffany, and then, of course, later with the great gifts from Jim and Fran, American art. That gift alone, which was separate from their first gift to the building, the gift of art that they gave for the new wing was worth $300 million. You know, we don't talk about money in art very much because for us it's about the value of what they are artistically, but it's hard to ignore when it's something that great. But Frances was 103, and someone said to me, oh, but you know, she lived a long and good life. I got to tell you, and I'm sure many of you may feel this way too, when I'm 103 and the Grim Reaper comes calling for me, I'm going to tell him I'm not ready to go. I need some more time. And I'm sure Frances, being as feisty as she was, probably was doing her best to stick around. We've had an exciting year in 2025. In fact, currently we still have on the right Alicia Keys, the great pop artist, and her husband Swizz Beatz. They're quite the pair and have amassed one of the great collections of contemporary art in the world, and because of a partnership of long standing with the Brooklyn Museum, we've been able to do a number of projects with our colleagues up in New York. And this exhibition, we had only budgeted for 40,000 visitors during the course of the exhibition. Contemporary art doesn't play as well as other things. We've already passed that, and we're probably going to get close to 100,000 visitors before all is said and done. This past year, we had nearly 625,000 visitors. There are only 1.3 million people in the Richmond metro area, and I doubt that number. I think they count some dogs and cats and a couple of coyotes along the way. When you look at 50% of your population as your attendance number, let me just draw your attention to Metro New York, the Met, and any of the other New York museums, but the Met leads them in attendance with about 6 million visitors. Half of their visitors are foreign tourists. Half of the other visitors are tourists that are visiting New York City. So about 1.5 million of their visitors are New Yorkers, and I can tell you accurately of the 625,000, about 90% of them are Virginians. So who's serving their community and their state? Probably not the Met quite as much. But we also, in addition to everything we do here on our campus, there is an amazing amount that goes on across the Commonwealth every day. The Artmobile, distance learning, our exhibitions, another 1.2 million people. That's in addition to the attendance on campus here in Richmond, Virginia. Frida led the way. We had 166,000 visitors. And then, of course, now we have the Giants exhibition with Alicia Keys and her husband. Actually, his real name is Mr. Dean. They are Mr. and Mrs. Dean, to be properly named. But as personable, you know, she's a world-class, major Grammy Award winning, I mean, every award they give out in music, more records than one can count. The two of them could not have been more personable, more unassuming and less demanding. And I can tell you, whatever people hear about people in the entertainment industry, they are not like the stereotypes. We've got a handful of great exhibitions going on right now. One of the exhibitions, though, is an exhibition of a longtime Richmond educator by the name of Alvin Lester. I've known Alvin the whole time I've been here in town. A very modest artist, very quiet, dedicated to education. And one day, Alvin says, you know, I used to do photography. And I said, really? And I said, why don't you bring a portfolio of your work in, or I'll come out to see you. And he did, and I got to tell you, you never know what's in your backyard. Because here's a guy who was making these photographs 35 years ago, and he worked up in Churchill and around town and took pictures primarily within businesses, African-American businesses, that quite frankly are world-class. I was absolutely stunned. And Alvin was like, oh, you're just saying that. I said, Alvin, no, these are absolutely fantastic photographs. And so as a result, we've acquired a whole suite of photographs for the collection, as well as doing this exhibition that's up right now. We have also the Virginia Museum out on the road. I was lucky enough to go just a couple of months ago down to Auckland, New Zealand. My job requires me to travel. But before you get too excited about, oh, I'd love to do what you do, Alex, I left the States, flew to California, to San Francisco, and then 15 hours to Auckland. I was in Auckland in a hotel for 3 nights before I got back and reversed that schedule, 15 hours and then another 6 hours to get to Richmond. And it didn't matter what time zone I was in because I couldn't remember anymore. But this is the largest and most popular art museum in New Zealand, and they did a fabulous job of the Lewis collection primarily. We've got an exhibition at the New Orleans Museum of Art. An exhibit that I curated on Hungarian-American photography in the 20th century is at the George Eastman Museum up in Rochester, and that is the largest and best museum of photography in the world. We also, with our partners in Abingdon, in Roanoke, and then the Piedmont Art Center, we've got other exhibitions that are out there as well. The Artmobile, our family days. If you want to have something fun as a trip, come down. It is February 10th. It's Saturday, February 10th from about 11 to 3. Come down to the Art Museum because it's China Fest. It's family day based on Chinese art and culture. Last year, we had 10,000 visitors between 11 and 3. Obviously, lots of kids. And obviously, not everybody, a vast majority of them are not Chinese or Chinese American. It's people interested in Chinese culture, and we have one of the great collections. But we also do a Hispanic Day changing the country every year. We do an Indigenous Peoples Day. And then the collection itself. As I mentioned, when we opened the new wing in 2010, which is now almost 16 years ago, we had 18,000 works of art in the collection. And as I mentioned a moment ago, we now have closer to 50,000 works of art. And among them, I have to say a special thank you to the Fisher family. Mrs. Fisher, when I arrived in town, was pressing towards 100 years old. But she had, from her husband's family, inherited this unbelievable collection of German Expressionism. His parents had amassed this collection in the first 2 decades of the 20th century. When they died in the 20s, they divided the collection into 2 halves to the 2 sons. And one son went to Rochester, New York in 1933, then came to Richmond the next year and was at MCV for decades. The other son stayed in Germany, and his collection was confiscated by the Nazis. And it's works like this one by Kirchner that through a lot of detective work and sleuthing have been uncovered. We now have acquired about 6 works. And what happens with Nazi war loot is you can't actually own title to a stolen work of art. So we work with the Fisher family lawyers and the people who own these works of art. One of the works, about 3-4 years ago, had been hanging on the wall at the Museum of Modern Art in New York since 1947. But it had been misidentified by the title and the date. And then through the detective work that got done, they determined that it was not that title and not that scene and not that date. And lo and behold, it was part of the other brothers' collection, had been stolen by the Nazis, had been sold to a gallery in New York after the war in 1946, and then sold to the Modern in 1947. And where is it hanging today? In Richmond, Virginia, on our walls. When I arrived in 2006, there were a number of American collectors who told me, Alex, you never show American art. And actually, I was surprised and son thinking, how could that possibly be? But we hadn't done a major American exhibition in something like 20 years. And we were not spending the time and attention collecting in American art. And I can tell you, all of that has changed dramatically. Of course, Jim and Fran McLaughlin were a large part of that. But we have stepped up. We have the 7th largest acquisitions endowment of any art museum in the country. And we're able to then, thanks to people like Harwood and Louise Cochran, buy fabulous work by, in this case, Duncan Fife, the master cabinet and furniture maker in New York. We also collect contemporary. You can't tell this from the picture on the screen, but that coyote is basically as large as life, and this whole canoe is about 9-10 feet long. And this is a statement by an indigenous American artist who unfortunately just died last year. She was a really important part of the contemporary scene, but it's really about the loss to our environment with trash and the things that are ruining the wilds as we know them. Maybe you remember back in the 80s or thereabouts, maybe it was the early 90s, that not Coca-Cola, the 7-Up commercial. And this actor, Jeffrey Holder, would hold up the drink and then say something, which I can't even remember what it is, and sip his 7-Up. But that actor was also a painter. He was in movies, he was in TV, but he did this as a possible self-portrait that we just acquired this past year. One of the great photographers to come from Virginia, Emmett Gowan, who lives in Southside, Virginia, down in Danville. Of course, Sally Mann, who I hope you may have heard of, one of the great contemporary photographers in the world today, still lives in Lexington. And one of the things about Virginia artists like Sally and Emmett is they leave, but they come back. Or in cases like Sally, they probably never leave other than to go to school. But we've been acquiring large collections by these Virginia artists because, as I remind everybody, Virginia is our first name. It's what we aim at in terms of collecting. It's what we aim at in terms of programming. It's what we aim at in terms of who we serve, which is all 9 million Virginians and then anybody lucky enough to come visit. We've been building our curatorial staff. In my time, we've virtually doubled the size of the staff. We've brought on great curators, Elisa as our Lewis curator for decorative arts, which includes what is arguably the first or second best collection of French Art Nouveau furniture and decorative arts in the world. Only the Musée d'Orsay can rival that. Lisa, who is our new Frabel curator of ancient Mediterranean art, she deals with Egypt, Rome, and then also Greece, fabulous new hire. Our chief conservator, Kate, came to us from a career at the Denver Art Museum. And then Yi, who is the new carpenter curator for East Asian art, which includes Japan, Korea, and China. Since the strategic plan began in 2021 to 25, we now have a new plan I'll mention in a moment. We've served nearly 7 million people here and across the state, and the Washington Post named us one of the top 20 art museums in America. And during that 4-year period, we added 13,367 works to the collection. We have a new strategic plan that I invite you to go onto our website and take a look at. We are nothing if we aren't bold. I go by the motto that is dream no small dreams. The fellow that started Delco, Mr. Kettering, Charles Kettering, said that about a century ago, and of course built one of the largest car companies in the world at the time, but we do the same. We may be in Virginia, and we don't have any aspirations to be the Met or the National Gallery. What we want to be is the best art museum for Virginia and Virginians. And that brings me to what we're doing. I'm going to give you a sneak preview on exhibitions and then the expansion. We have coming up in May this massive exhibition on the great Mughal period of India. You want to talk about an eye-popping, jewel-filled extravaganza. Be prepared. This is an exhibition that we're working with our great friends in London at the V&A, and it's our first big exhibition on Indian art in the better part of about 7 or 8 years. And we have one of the great Indian sculpture collections in the world. For those of you who like Impressionism, our great partners in Dallas are working with us. We work with them on the Frida Kahlo show. We're also going to marry our Impressionist collection that's not on view at the moment into that as well, and then bring some of the things out from the Mellon collection. But for all of those who love Impressionism, this is going to be one you do not want to miss. And then we're also celebrating the 250th anniversary of the country, and we've got a traveling exhibition that we'll be doing with the Artmobile, but then also we're marrying a series of 6 paintings, 5 of which are in the collection of the Virginia Museum of Fine Arts. Coincidentally, the 6th painting is in the collection of my former institution in Ohio. And I always wondered and wished we could bring them together. These paintings were done, it's the picture on the right, it's the life of Washington. 6 paintings that take him from being a boy with that legendary, not truthful story of him throwing the dollar across the Potomac and chopping down the cherry tree and all that good stuff. Anyways, it goes through that all the way up to the death of Washington. Those paintings were done in the 1850s. Somehow the one got separated and ended up in Dayton, Ohio. They have never been united before until this year. And so to celebrate Valentine's Day, we're going to bring those 6 paintings together. And then we're also then going to bring the work of Titus Kafur, who's one of the leading contemporary artists in the world today, who has done a number of works inspired by George Washington that take historically important pictures, and then he marries them with contemporary styling. I mean, it's going to be a fabulous, thought-provoking exhibition that we'll be doing starting in February. We will have on the Artmobile an exhibition that looks at America, but looks at it through the lens of Virginia. So we'll have paintings, photographs, drawings, and sculpture that'll tour the Commonwealth. We go everywhere in Virginia. Last year, the Artmobile was visited by 306,000 visitors. Okay, let me put that in perspective. There are about 2,500 art museums in the country. It would be in the top 50 of attendance if it were a standalone art museum being measured by its attendance. And you think about all the cities in America today, and the Artmobile would be like 40th best attended in the country. I mean, that's how popular it is. We've got a great program starting actually this Friday. We're reviving a program that had been many decades ago, and we're calling it Rewind, Fast Forward, and it's involving both music and visual art, and I invite everybody to come out on Friday evening at 6:30, and of course, we have the best cafe, Amuse, which is one of the most wonderful dining experiences in Richmond, and you know, you can make an evening of it. Fine Arts and Flowers, excuse me. Every couple of years, our council does one of the most spectacular and popular programs we do, and they marry the art of flower design to works of art in the collection. And so this is going to be a Fine Arts and Flowers year. It begins with a gala on the Wednesday night, then Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And of course, I'd be remiss without saying, as you probably know, we're the only art museum in America that is open with free general admission 365 days a year. No one else does that. Only the Virginia Museum of Fine Arts. The Virginia Watercolor Society is going to be having its annual exhibition in the museum beginning in September. And I can tell you, I've been dealing with watercolor artists for the better part of 45 or 50 years now, and we are really, really lucky to have such a tremendous number of great watercolor painters in the Commonwealth. I'd be pressed to name a state that in the art of watercolor does any better. Florida, a lot of people end up in Florida, but I guarantee you Virginia could hold its own against Florida any day. All right, now I'm going to treat you to something that, other than our trustees and our foundation board of directors, has not been seen. We embargoed it from the media. We're going to be doing it tonight with our State of the Museum address, online and in person. And what you're seeing here right now is an artist rendition of the McLaughlin Wing Roman numeral II. Just to put it in perspective, if you're staying in the northern part of the Robbins Sculpture Garden and looking south towards Grove Avenue is behind the people. You can see the chapel from the former Confederate home there, just above the trees on the right. So the building is 179,000 square feet. Let me give you that in acres. 4 acres of building under roof. Think about 4 acres. If you had a half-acre lot around your house, that was a lot. This is 8 times that space in the building, and most all of it is public space. It starts on the ground floor, which you see behind the person to the left. We're bumping out the atrium. Let me see if this pointer works. No. Well, the atrium gets bumped out as it is now in the 2010 wing. So what you're seeing is a 2-story glass addition with a terrace up on top of it. And so it comes out toward the garden, and then it joins up, and I'll take you inside the building in just a moment, it joins up into the rest of the atrium that goes all the way down to Grove Avenue. Above it are then 3 more stories. It's a 5-story building, and 4 of those stories are for art, and then I'll talk about the 5th floor in just a moment. Here's a look at it from the sculpture garden at twilight. So you can see to the left the extension where the atrium gets bumped out. There's the terrace, and behind the terrace on that 3rd floor is Amuse, our restaurant, and down on the 1st floor in the lower left-hand corner is the Best Cafe. So you come in through that extension, and we're looking down toward Grove Avenue. So this is the new atrium, and we'll get into the stair hall in just a little bit. And as you go down towards Grove Avenue, to your left as you're walking through this area, which is being called the living room, you have the new galleries for African art. To the right, you have the sculpture garden, and it's a 2-story wall of glass that runs 300 feet from that extension of the atrium down to the corner on Grove Avenue. 300 feet is the length of a football field, okay? So those of you who watched Indiana and Miami last night, it's from one end zone to the other. It's not a small space. And now we've just turned around. We've walked down through that space, and we turned around and looking back so you can see, if it's a little hard to see, that the red reeds, the Chihuly reeds, which, by the way, are staying in the pond during construction. It's the second most photographed spot in Richmond, Virginia. Kehinde Wiley's sculpture out front is the most photographed spot in Richmond today. So the atrium leads you back. To the right are the African galleries. The African galleries they're moving from the 1970 wing into the new wing. They're going to have 8,700 square feet of space. That's basically the size of four good houses. It'll be the second largest space dedicated to African art in the country, topped only by the Smithsonian's National Museum of African Art. How's that? Here's an interior view. This is also has a combination of two-story space and one-story space. It's going to be absolutely fantastic. And of course, the goal for this new wing is to bring out more art. As I mentioned, we had 17,000 works of art in the collection when we opened the wing, the McLaughlin Wing, Roman numeral 1, in 2010. 16 years later, we have more than 50,000. In the 3 years it's going to take to build this building, I hate to say, but we're going to add, obviously, probably another 10,000 or more works of art to the collection. American art is going to occupy the entire third floor, 30,000 square feet of space dedicated to American art. That's the fourth largest space for American art of any comprehensive art museum in America. So stop and think about this. The Met, Chicago, Boston. Who's number 4? Virginia. There you go. We think ours is going to be the best, but we won't go there. Modern contemporary art is going to be up on the 4th floor. It's going to have 5 times the space that it has currently. And then we're also going to build a second major exhibition space for special exhibitions, about 13,000 square feet. So think about the Frida Kahlo show, the Giants exhibition that we have now that is downstairs in the first McLaughlin wing. We're basically duplicating that space, putting it upstairs on the 4th floor. So there will never be any interims between major exhibitions. We'll always have a big exhibition on view, except that 70% of the time, we're going to have 2. So imagine having Frida Kahlo with 160,000 visitors downstairs, and then upstairs, we've got the Terracotta Army, which drew 250,000 visitors. And so the 625,000 people we had this last year is going to get dwarfed by what is going to happen in the future. Here's a look inside the atrium itself, and those of you who love the bunny that had been out on the bunny landing, it's coming back. I promise you it will be in the new McLaughlin wing. It's really actually a hare, but, you know, bunny hair. Up on the top floor, we're going to be filling a niche that, quite frankly, does not have its spot filled in the Richmond region, and that's a special event space that will seat 500 people for a luncheon, a dinner, or whatever. Now, the train station where our new governor held her inaugural ball on Saturday night holds like 3,000 people. But there is nothing of quality between that and our space that's going to be available 365 days a year. And I can tell you one of the most exciting things is if you look to the right, you see people, they're actually outside. There's a terrace out on that 5th floor that's going to be allow the building to be set back and not be so dominating to the landscape. But that terrace goes around on 3 sides. It looks at the sculpture garden. From the south side on Grove Avenue, you'll be able to see downtown. I mean, it is going to be magnificent. We also have, beyond the glass wall in the distance, a suite of boardrooms and meeting rooms for our trustees, our foundation directors, but each of those only meet quarterly, so it'll be available for all kinds of community engagements of its own. Downstairs on the 1st floor is going to be a new food establishment. It's going to be a bistro. And so this is going to be somewhere between the style of the Best Cafe and Amuse. It'll be our 4th restaurant on campus. And I'm going to finish up showing you a couple of more pictures, renderings. I mean, these are so real that I keep looking at them and thinking, oh gosh, the building's done. I don't have to worry about it anymore. Except that we have to build it. We're going to start construction this summer. We'll be done in the first part of 2029. It takes about 33 to 36 months to build this. Very complicated. Unlike a regular building, we provide both humidity and dehumidification and a whole variety of other things, obviously security and the rest. So I want to say thank you, Paul, and to all of you and Charlie for inviting me here today. And I'm more than happy to entertain a few questions if you have them. That one works.
Just raise your hands. I'll be happy to run the microphone out to you.
Yeah, we're using the microphone because people obviously are watching this from their homes as well.
Thank you for your presentation. It was wonderful. I've always thought that rumors of war lost about half its impact when they took the real statue at Stewart Circle down. Have you ever considered grabbing that statue and juxtaposing the two?
It's a great question, and I get asked that all the time. And I will tell you, Kehinde Wiley, when he created the sculpture, well, we did the Kehinde Wiley exhibition 2016. That was one of our partnerships with Brooklyn. And he came down, had never been to Richmond, never seen Monument Avenue, and he was totally taken by the juxtaposition of that in contemporary history. He really didn't want that sculpture to come down. He thought it was a nice counterpoint on the other end of Monument Avenue to his sculpture. We've got two challenges. Number one, there's really no place for it. And the second is, and going back to Candy, we said, where could you cite it, place it that would make sense? And he said, no place. It was meant for Monument Avenue, and that's where it should be. And short of that, unfortunately, it's for the history books. Quite frankly, I don't know what's going to happen to that sculpture. As you probably know, all of them are down at the water reclamation plant under tarps. So, it'll be interesting to see how that all unwinds. But, it's a great question. We're just very happy that long before the idea of monuments coming down became a serious thing, Kehinde created that sculpture. And as I mentioned, it's the most photographed spot in Richmond, Virginia. Anybody else? Uh-oh, Charlie, I'm in trouble now. I said I would answer anything, but now I'm going to change my mind.
This will not be about suffering Orioles, but you were the fifth director who served. Can you hear?
Yeah, there you go.
Okay. You were the fifth director of the Virginia Museum of Fine Arts that I served with at VHS.
Wow.
And I've got to hand it to you. You're the best. They were all good, talented people. What you've done at VFMA is just incredible.
Thank you, Charlie. Thank you. I paid him for that. That was a paid advertising announcement. But Charlie, as you know, built the Virginia Historical Society, even though it had been around for 150 years before him. He built it into one of the great historical society and history museums in America. And to be able to be side by side is always, my office looks out over the, I can't call it anything but the Historical Society. I know it has a different name, but it's a proud moment every time. And a prouder moment is having you as one of my dear colleagues, but more importantly, dear friends. So thank you, Charlie. Appreciate it. Yes.
Paul and I have had the opportunity to tour the conservation area at the museum, and I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about that, because it's a gem and something that is really something that the VMFA should be very proud of.
Well, thank you. And actually, I've got to make some changes because, and I'll give you all a sneak hint. Tonight we're doing the State of the Museum. You are, and I say this kindly, you are my guinea pigs. This is the same presentation that I'm going to be doing this afternoon at the end of the day, except I will be changing it. And one of the things, and thank you for asking that question, I'm going to add a couple of things. One, because the Conservation Center is expanding. When the American galleries move out of the 2010 wing, that space is going to be divided into two pieces, and the 21st Century galleries are also moving out into the new wing. And that's exciting because one half of the American galleries is going to be transformed into 5,400 square feet of photography galleries, which will make it, thank you, yes, I'm a photo historian. My world revolves around photography every day. It'll make it the fourth largest space dedicated to photography of any comprehensive art museum in America. 5 galleries. And I'm not going to say this tonight, but I'll tell you, we're going to have one gallery, and I'm talking low so nobody records this, one gallery dedicated to Sally Mann, one of the greatest photographers in history, in America today, in the world. The other half of the American galleries, where the McLaughlin collection is housed, is going to be the Frank Razor Center for Works on Paper. It's going to be comprised of two things. One, a storage area that's going to take all of our photographs, drawings, prints, and other works on paper and create a massive space for all of that so it can continue to expand. It's the largest part of our collection. But the 21st Century galleries are then going to be transformed into a Works on Paper Conservation Center, expanding the Conservation Center, the Good Conservation Center up on the 3rd floor. We have one of the largest conservation centers of any art museum in America, and it's getting larger and better. And so thank you for asking that, because I've been in this field for actually, my first internship in a museum was at the Smithsonian 50 years ago right now. It was the spring of 1976. And I started out as an archaeologist, and so I was at the Department of North American Archaeology, and new conservation centers well, and I had been down to the Virginia Museum of Fine Arts and the like. But let me tell you, I go in, and after 50 years of doing this, I am always amazed at what our conservation colleagues do. I mean, it's almost black magic. I mean, it's just so exciting. They're scientists, they're chemists, and they do amazing, amazing things. The scariest thing is when our paper conservators or our photo conservators, and we have several of those, when they take a print, a work on paper, and they put it in a bath. And I'm talking about, think about a plastic tray 6 inches deep with liquid in it, and they put a print in it. And it's like, whoa, wait a minute, what are you doing? It's how they clean works. Now, they know what they're doing. You wouldn't want me to try to do that. It would not come out so well. But anybody who's interested in touring the Conservation Center, certainly let us know. We keep it behind closed doors for obvious reasons, but Aaron, who is with me today, would be more than happy, or I would, to set up a time to do that, and maybe we can arrange a tour, because it's mind-boggling to see what they do to restore works of art. I think we have time for a question or two.
How were you able to bring the Kehane Wiley statue there to fruition, the process of getting it here? I'm sure there were politics involved and everything else.
The which sculpture?
The Wiley sculpture.
Oh, the Kehinde Wiley? Thanks for asking that question. All right. Kehinde Wiley, one of the great artists in the world today, we did his exhibition. He comes to Richmond. We had a hard time getting him here. He'd never been to Richmond and wasn't real keen on visiting Virginia. And it's like, okay, he comes here and he's blown away by the museum. He's blown away by Richmond. He's enamored with the statues up on Monument Avenue. Well, fast forward to 2018, and we're in New York. It's Michael Taylor, my chief curator, Valerie Cassell-Oliver, who is our head of contemporary art and a world-class curator, won more awards as a curator than anybody I know. And so the three of us are there because Sally Mann is getting a big award in New York at this fancy dinner with hundreds of people, and Kehinde's getting one too. And he comes up to us, and he has his phone, and he says, I got a picture to show you. And he holds up a rendering of the sculpture that you now see. And he said, what do you think? And so you take, Jeb Stuart's sculpture, and then you put a young contemporary black guy with the dreadlocks and the rest, and it's like, wow. And he said, well, this is what I've thought of doing. And he said, well, tell us more. He said, we want it to be an exact duplicate in terms of size, from the ground to the top, 29 feet tall. And he said, what do you think? And you know what? I think the three of us in unison said, do it. And so he got his gallery involved, and we commissioned him to do that work of art. And then it was inaugurated on Times Square in September of 2019. He had obviously then to design it, create the wax maquette, clay and then wax, and then have it cast, because obviously it's huge. And a studio of people all did that. And then we installed it to great fanfare in New York City, and then moved here in December. And we had 5,000 people on a rainy December day to unveil that sculpture. Now, it had a downside, though. As soon as that sculpture went up, there were a number of Virginians, a number of members, about 2,000 members who protested and quit, who said, I no longer will renew my membership. Angry at us for doing that. And this is before the sculptures on Monument Avenue were taken down. We had twice that many people join the museum because of what we did. So, it's become the most photographed spot because it makes a statement. And as I mentioned, Kehinde didn't want to see those other sculptures taken down. But, the course of history winds its interesting way on its own. And I will tell you this. More than a few times, and it's fairly often, people will stop me and waggle their finger in my face and say, it's because of you that we lost all those monuments. I mean, first time I heard it, it's like, I'm sorry, what are you talking about? And it's like, well, you did that sculpture and then the monuments came down. We had nothing to do with the monuments on Monument Avenue. That's all I can say. But, I think that what it does to make the museum represent as an institution of inclusivity for all Virginians is a really important statement. So thanks for asking that question.
We probably have time for one more. And Alex is, yep, one more. Okay.
Since I moved here from Delaware and have a good friend who was involved with the art conservation program collaboration between the University of Delaware and Winterthur,
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about collaborative programs that you have in education for postgraduate education in various fields related to art.
Thank you. We actually have a number of programs. In fact, particularly just within the conservation area, we have postgraduate fellowships where we bring in full-time paid postgraduate fellows, people that go to Winterthur, that go to the State University program in New York. There are a couple of other. There are not many conservation programs in America, unfortunately, but we have several fellowship programs. We also then do the same thing in curatorial and in our education area. We have really, both with education and curatorial and with conservation, some of the best experts in the country. But we think it's very important. We're part of the Department of Education. We are a state agency. Only 20% of our budget comes from the Commonwealth of Virginia. The other 80% comes from all of you. But we think it's very important that we do things to promote higher education, fellowships and internships and the like. And then we also collaborate with the universities here in Virginia, VCU, UVA, Virginia Tech, in a variety of areas, and even areas outside of the arts. We're a fairly good-sized business. We have about 500 the equivalent of 500 full-time employees, a budget of $60 million. So we're not a small financial concern. And so we have people in marketing, we have people on the development side, the business side, to make sure that I'll close this answer on this note. We're in our 90th year. We closed out June of 2025, our 89th year in the black. I don't know of another art museum that has consistently been in the black every year of its existence. I'm not even sure it's possible. We do it, so it is possible. So, thank you.
Alex and Aaron will be here for another minute or two before they have to run off to a luncheon commitment, but thank you for attending, and let's thank Alex one more time.
Thank you all very much.